I'm very glad to be here. I'm also very honored with the invitation to speak on this special edition of the Harvest Day, and to speak about something no less than the future of social science. And I will talk about how we can and perhaps also should navigate the digital age and its transformative potential. I will speak about that. This is much more a talk where I share my reflections with you, where we start a discussion than a research presentation as normally given at these events. And I hope it stirs some debate. And while the world is changing, and I will say a bit about how the world is changing in my view, some things remain constant. And for me, also personally, the AISSR and its predecessor, AISSR, is one of those constants. I did my PhD in the corridors of the AISSR back then with some of the people joining us today. I see Rachel, I see Justus. In this building as part of the East Indies House complex. And to the right is my office, I remember, at the second floor, B29, I believe. And that was a very remarkable time for me personally, because it was a highly interdisciplinary setting, as Justus already mentioned in his opening. Right? So this was a time where, as a young scholar, I could interact with, coming from political science, with young, smart people from sociology, from anthropology, a very interdisciplinary setting where we had intellectually inspiring interdisciplinary discussions, right? In the spirit of Goudsblom, in the spirit of de Zwaan, we spoke about all these topics that we cared about, and we had interdisciplinary discussions. Now let me show you this. This is an edition of the journal Nature. You may have heard of this journal. And this is from last year. All of a sudden, they spearheaded some remarkable research on a very innovative topic. They had 2 papers in one issue on the topic of social capital. And that was, of course, really good to see social capital in such an important journal as Nature. But it was also a little bit weird, because in those corridors of that AISSR or ASSR, we, of course, discussed already these topics. We had discussions about Bourdieu's The Forms of Capital from 86, I believe, and Coleman his work on the role of social capital in the creation of human capital. Right? This was a big discussion. We spoke about Putnam, we spoke about Nan Lin. So everybody, or a lot of people here, have been talking about social capital already for a long time. So why was Nature all of a sudden pushing this as something novel? What is going on here? Well, maybe they are just late to the scene, right? We were already there. They're a little bit late to arrive. Nothing to see here. Please walk on, right? That might be the case. Or perhaps something else is going on, right? Why was this seem so innovative? Well, this particular study, used very large data to study social capital. They used data from Facebook, 21 billion friendship relations, to empirically test if social capital is related to upward social mobility. And it was innovative because it was big. It used this big data. And on the one hand, we can say, well, they are late to the scene. We already know what's going on. But at the same time, this means that there's a huge appreciation or reappreciation for those questions that we as social scientists have been asking ourselves and trying to answer for over 100 years. And there is a shift going on, right? And my point is that we should not miss this boat. This is not a trivial moment in scientific history. So 3 questions are central in our discussions today. How is the world changing? Should social sciences change as well? And how can we as social sciences contribute to a better world? Well, in my view, yes, the world is changing. Social life now, for a large part, takes place both offline and online. Right? We have increasingly large quantities of data, digital trace data, data about human interaction, and that opens up opportunities for social scientific research. And we should seize those opportunities, I would argue. Thus, then, social sciences has to change as well. I say yes, yes, we need to change. Because this is not just about us using our craft and our tools and our methods and our theories to study what's going on in the digital world. It is also about transforming the way we do social science. Now let me be clear on this point. I'm not arguing that all social science need to change. Absolutely not. There is a lot of important non-digital social life that we need to study. And we also need to use our current methods to understand how the digital world is crafted and governed and transformed. However, this digital revolution has significant transformative potential, and I believe that it can contribute to a science that is better able than before to answer some of our most fundamental questions. And then, how can the social sciences change the world? In what I will talk about in the remainder of this talk, I hope I will be able to show that I think there's potential by creating truly novel interdisciplinary cooperation beyond the domains in the social sciences. So reach out to domains that are even more distant to us and combine the problem-solving capacities from those different domains with our key social science questions. Now, that's a lot, but the good thing is we are already changing. Change is already set in motion. So, what am I talking about if I talk about this digital era and the changes that are on the way? There are two main pillars that drive these developments. First of all, the rise of new large data sets on human interaction that were not per se designed to do research on, but that are very well suited for doing so. So the rise of big social data. And second, the rise of new methods and techniques to analyze these large bodies of data. And broadly speaking, I summarize that under the rise of data science. Now, data science, right, we should not see that as something that happens outside the social sciences. Right? It is not just a course at Science Park. It is something that we should integrate into the social sciences because it can transform and improve the way we work. And this comes together in the novel domain of computational social science. Indeed, a novel domain, Justus, and the domain was coined more or less in an article in Science in 2009 by David Lazar and some others, updated in 2020 also in Science. And if you look at their definition, they take these two pillars, right? They say it's a coming together of computational methods on the one hand and big social data, and that creates something new. And I say, yes, that is correct, but that is incomplete as well, because it should also include the pillar of social science and humanities theories. Right? It is the theories and the questions that we have that make it all worthwhile. I also strongly believe that we need to be aware that computational social science is not just an extended form of quantitative or empirical sociology. Right? It should build on the broad quantitative and qualitative bodies of work that we developed as social scientists. And yes, it allows for data-driven exploration, right? And that is something we are a little bit uncomfortable with as social scientists often, right? We like to start with theories and then we like to look at the empirics, but why not do the other way around, right? Why not search for patterns in the data that we study? We may get a good idea, right? What's bad about that? But we cannot stop there, of course. Then we need to add meaning to those newly observed patterns. And here also I strongly believe that we can build on the long tradition of the AISSR and the expertise that we have amongst our midst. There is a lot we can learn still from each other across our own disciplines. To put this a little bit into context, what is computational social science and where does it come from? We hosted here a couple of years ago the International Conference on Computational Social Science, the 5th edition, so it was early on. And we asked the participants to mention their the domain they were trained in and the domain they now identify with. And you can see that there's relations, and you can make this network plot. And then you can see computational social science in the middle. It was a conference on computational social science. But you can see where people come from, because they were not trained in that yet, because it didn't exist when people were trained. You can also see that data science is emerging as something new. But what this displays, most importantly, is that it is a very truly interdisciplinary endeavor. So it's people coming together from sociology, from computer science, but also from physics, right? Also from industrial engineering. And that is nice, that is good, that is exciting, but that is also not so easy. It's laborious, and it creates a lot of issues as well. And I'd like to use some personal reflections on those issues and how to deal with that. Now, personally, I have a very long-standing interest in questions about corporate governance. And I study that from a relational perspective. I'm interested in how businesses are connected through their ownership structures, shared owners, and how directors and board members of corporations are connected through elite networks. So a large part of my work studies networks of corporate elite and corporate governance. And back in the days when I was in that office, you saw in the beginning, that meant meticulously connecting the data, right? Getting annual reports together and comparing names so you could actually study reliable data. Big data in those areas was maybe 200 firms or something like that. And around 2010, 2011, something changed. There always were external directories with names of directors and shareholders and so on by third parties. But around that time, two things happened. The data quality of those registers increased tremendously, and their scope increased tremendously. So all of a sudden, there was not just national databases, but international databases. And what happened? Immediately, a group of physicists jumped on this. Right? And then they published a really nice paper on the global network of corporate control, studying how corporations are connected through ownership, millions of corporations across the globe. Now, one of the authors later on admitted to me, so I can say this, they really had no idea what they were talking about. Right? They had no genuine interest in corporate governance. It was an application for them. They thought, well, that's interesting. There is a network there. We can find their structures. And as domain expert, right, I also had a bit of an unease. Like, they don't really know what's going on. Is this science? But at the same time, they bring in a new perspective. They bring in new tools, and we can work with that. We can do something with that. So by that time, I sought collaborations with computer scientists. And that took a bit of work, but it worked out fine. And we also created a computational social science research group here. And when you start working together, some really fundamental questions pop up. Questions such as, what is a scientific contribution? What is a scientific contribution? Remember that many of the fields more distant from us are much more problem-solving oriented. Right? They identify a problem and they say, we need to find a solution. I see Nanne nodding over there, right? And for us, as a social scientist, we see that more as a method. So there's an interesting way of calculating communities in large networks. And then for us, social scientists, the work starts because we want to use that to add meaning, right? To better understand the world. And the flip side of that coin is, should we care about how our research can have an impact on the real world? I think a large majority in this room probably says yes. Yes, that's important. We are social scientists. In many other domains, that is not so obvious. That is not so obvious. And I still have discussions with co-authors from different domains on papers, for instance, on social segregation, that they say, well, we measure it, but should we really reflect on the policy consequences of this? Right? So these are conversations that you need to have. I think that in part we found a good mix for bridging those disciplines, and some ingredients of that mix include the following. I think as social scientists we can bring in the big questions. We can bring in theory, we can bring in relevance, we can also bring in a proper understanding of the data provenance. Where does data come from? How is it created? Right? As social scientists, we are used to have a relationship with our data. We often create it ourselves. I say that in the age of big data, it's even more important that we keep that relationship and understanding of the data that we work with, and we bring that to the fore. Data scientists, they bring in novel approaches and novel methods that help us to do research. But importantly, I believe that these are not just methods, not just tools, they also offer novel levels of analysis, novel perspectives that we can use to study what we are interested in. And therefore, this can also be seeds for theoretical innovation. For instance, in the example of agent-based modeling, a very well-established approach which slowly but steadily seeps into the social sciences. We now have larger data sets that we can use to build these models, but that requires us as social scientists to very carefully and clearly think about the interactions of our research subjects, perhaps much more systematic than we are used to. And at the same time, the European Commission has a big flagship project called Destination Earth, right? And the idea is to develop a highly accurate digital model of the Earth on a global scale, including its human behavior, right? Why do they want it? Because we need to do something to make the world sustainable. Now, if you want to do that, you need social science to do this, right? So we need to connect to them to make this work. A few quick examples of how this impacts my own work. I'm currently working in a project called Population Scale Social Network Analysis, and that is a collaboration with Statistics Netherlands, University of Amsterdam and University of Leiden. And this is an example of one of those data sets that was not created for doing research, but that is actually really helpful for doing research. And in this case, we work with Statistics Netherlands, and we look at the relational data in their registers. So for the entire population of the Netherlands, the registered population of the Netherlands, we know family relations, we know who lives in households, next door neighbors, who you go to school with, who you go to work with. Right? And if you add this all up, you get a social network of 70 million nodes and about more than 800 million edges. That is a representation of what we call the social opportunity structure that people are embedded in. Right? And then we can start asking those questions that we are interested in. Right? Remember the social capital article in Nature. We can also look at that at this larger and granular level in the Netherlands. For instance, looking at how the network structure in the social opportunity structure relates to volunteering or, for instance, crime and health. Some of the more speculative theories of social capital say that more social capital is good for health. And this is just as a means of illustration. So the first the first three are some network indicators. So we see, for instance, that a high degree, so a lot of relations in the social opportunity structure, this is aggregated at the neighborhood level, is indeed positively related to levels of volunteering, what you would expect. The same with social assistance benefits. And the Nature article did not really find good effects of network measures, but they are here. This is health. Let's blow it up a little bit. Here you can see that, and remember, this is one of the more speculative parts of the theory, that there is a strong relation between, a predictive relation between degree in the social opportunity structure and health, to the same, more or less to the same extent as income is, and much more than education. Just an illustration of what we can do and where we can go to. Now, we are here to talk about the future of social science, so I will end on a few notes on that. So, here we go. I have 4 points, and I believe 1 minute, so first of all, we should embrace the opportunities the digital age offers for social science, and not just study it, but also let it transform the way that we practice social science research. And we should not be afraid for data-driven exploration. We might even get a good idea. We should embrace methods and analytical approaches from other domains, not just as a tool, but also as a theoretical inspiration. We also should seek out interdisciplinary collaborations with the more distant domains, with physics, computer science, earth sciences, and we should rely here on our vast knowledge. Don't undersell. We really have something to offer, and at the same time, don't assume that we will remain on top of our own area. I mean, people will come in from other domains. Why? Because we study the good stuff. What we are studying is what really matters, and other domains are increasingly seeing that. So they will start studying our topics, so we better join forces. Above all, I think we should fundamentally transform our education, and this is an opportunity for doing so. And I've heard what Professor Essert has said about it, about increasing caring, and we can do that also here. Right? We are trying to set up a new discipline here. We have an undergraduate program in computational social science. Some of the students are here, some of the lecturers are here. And we need to train a new generation of scholars and professionals. Teach them from the beginning scientific programming, machine learning, but also social scientific theories, humanity theories, and research methods, right? From the beginning, not at the PhD level, not at the research master level. We need to train a generation that realizes that digital innovations can be a source of solutions, but also of problems in itself. And we do so in a unique Amsterdam way, I believe, right? Where we have an appreciation for both the qualitative and the quantitative body of social science. And we reach out, we work with partners inside but also outside the university. Some of them are here, who have challenges that can inspire us to do research, but also form our education in such a way that we increase the chance of learning. And if we ask that question, right, and caring also is a part of that, then we can transform our education as well. And when I'm walking through the corridors of the computational social science program, it is not very unlike the buzz and the discussions that was going on in the corridors of the East Indies House when the AISSR was there, where young people try to cross disciplinary boundaries due to their intellectual curiosity. So I believe, yes, the social science should change, and we are well on the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you for such an energizing talk. Extra impressive because I happen to know that you have a newborn in the house. And yet, I have a question that is related to the Oost Indies House, weirdly enough. I did my PhD there. And I also remember that we, not you and I, but other people met in the corridors. And yet when I wanted to talk to you a year ago or so, and I wanted to talk about collaboration, and I had to find you in a different building. So nowadays, when we need to find each other, and we're working on similar topics, and we're all writing in our research proposals that we want to have interdisciplinary research, and also we all know how challenging it is, right? Not only because of the different buildings, but also because of the different language. What is, in your take, because you seem very experienced and happy with collaborating and with thinking about this, what is a realistic way to work interdisciplinary on topics such as big data?
That is a very good question, of course. I mean, I can share some experiences that I believe works. First of all, realize that it's not easy, right? I mean, that's the point that I try to make. It's laborious because you're not doing the same thing. If you want to work across disciplines, everybody also at the same time is busy with making an impact in their home domain, right? So you need to keep an eye open for that. At the same time, you can traverse those boundaries, but you need to invest in that. So don't expect that this is an easy thing to do. So you need to have commitment from both ways. So a buy-in from both ways. Now, in more practical terms, in those, this is Opa verteld. So in those days at the AISSR, what was really nice, that particular building, the PhDs were housed there, but not the departments. So it was a PhD community. And that was really special because we identified as a PhD community as well. The institute is now much larger, right? So there's a scale issue, but we can think about what can we do to bring PhDs together, also in offices and so on. So that's one thing. And the other very obvious thing is our education. We should meet in teaching. We should meet in our core activities, right? And that's what I'm observing now with computational social science, where we have people from 3 faculties coming together, but also from our own social science, people from empirical sociology, but also data ethnography. Right? And for students, it makes so much sense that this comes together, right? So we can use that as well to reach out across our own disciplines, but don't expect that this happens easily. It requires nurturing.
Yeah. And linking on to your students, you just mentioned you think it's important to train students in specific ways, but I believe when I met you in the building, you also learned a lot from them already. Can you give us an insight on some of the cases that they studied so that we get an impression of the types of research that is being conducted by them?
So I'm almost tempted to give the microphone to some of the students in the room, right? But this resonates directly with Professor Essert, her contribution. What we do in this program from the beginning, from day one, and it's a bachelor program, we do transdisciplinary education. So we work with partners who bring us a challenge, and then our students pick it up and they start working on it. And a bit of an old way of thinking is, but wait a minute, we haven't taught them anything yet, right? So they can't do anything yet. But that is, of course, totally incorrect, because they don't arrive at the university without any experience, without any knowledge, right? They already bring a lot. So that is really nice to see that already from the beginning, even with partners, they bring experiences, and then we teach them all kind of things, analysis, how to do stakeholder analysis. We learn them about wicked problems. We learn data visualization techniques, right? And then they use that to study all kinds of complicated problems. And the partners we work with, they are really eager to learn how these students can then represent these difficult problems. The topics are very wide-ranging, from mobility issues to climate change issues. But the main point is that students can do a lot. And if we tap into their experience and use that to teach, the chance on learning increases, and we even have an opportunity to cross disciplinary boundaries.
And it's such a dynamic field, and also such a technique that develops so quickly, right? Yeah. So not just for curricula, but this is also challenging, I think, for people writing proposals. Like, there's a slow pace, and you can't really keep up with what is already possible a month later, right? What's your take on that?
That is even more so a problem in our educational programs. Yeah. When we were setting up this program, we had to do, of course, an accreditation, and very detailed. We had to describe what we would teach, when and how. And now maybe you've heard of ChatGPT, right? I mean, this is something. AI is changing so fast, so we want to update that immediately and integrate that in our education, right? So that requires a constant updating of the material, and that is not. We're not used to that, but it's also not. It should not be a threat, right? Because there is a core of knowledge and of skills that you want to train and you want to give to your students. But it's in practice not so difficult to add additional knowledge to it. And that's actually, I think, the best of our own education. If you're teaching a class and you can talk about issues that you are working on in your research right now, aren't those the best teaching experiences?
Yeah. And talking about those skills and talking about ChatGPT, for example, I think everybody who's tried it, or DeepL or whatever, you notice that there comes a potential for laziness. Like it's handy if a computer can do things for you. So if you talk about the changing of social science, do you also think we will see different social scientists in the future with different skills, different things that they had to develop and different things that they did not have to develop because nowadays ChatGPT does it for them?
I mean, most likely, right? I mean, if you, the current generation of social scientists is also differently equipped than a generation of 60 years ago, right? Some things will not change, right? Our deep commitment to the most pressing questions in our societies, and the eagerness and the curiosity that drives us. Our toolkit will change, for sure. I don't see these generative AI programs as per se as a threat. We had the same when Wikipedia came up, remember? We thought, oh, students will not learn anything anymore. They will just look at Wikipedia, right? Yes, there is a laziness, but people are lazy, right? We are also lazy, everybody here. So that's not something that will change, right? What we do need to do is carefully think about our work and our professional ethics and so on, right? And I didn't have time to mention that in the talk, but when you think about research ethics, right? I think that the rise of the digital age, and especially the big data entering the social sciences, it requires that we do much more reflection on the ethics, that we have professional conversations about that, peer review that, and don't believe that it's enough to do some kind of a procedural ethics check. That might be necessary, right? But we need to increase our own professional reflection on this. And if you do that, then very often the problems that we face are practical problems, right? Yes, ChatGPT is a problem because now I cannot do a take-home exam anymore. Well, why were we doing this kind of testing in the first place, right? Again, linking back to Professor Assert, her conversation, maybe we should think about why we do all this testing. And does this increase learning? Well, I'm not so certain.
No. I think we have 30 seconds left. So I'm going to force you to hopefully say yes, but maybe also no on the last question. Yes. You mentioned that a lot of social scientists, luckily, are in their profession because they think it matters what they do, or at least they want it to matter. I also see that in your educational system, a lot of students are actually coming from the idea that they want to contribute, that they can do something good. So do you think that if we talk about good care, can there be something like a digital good care in the future?
Yes.
We're such a good duo.